Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Susan Ford Collins. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting, Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here today. How are you?
I'm fine, and I'm delighted to be with you.
I'm delighted to have you here with us today. We're going to talk about your new book, Blur, Clear the Way Ahead, even in the worst times. And boy, there's been some really challenging, tough times the past couple of years. But things seem a blur, and not just from recent stuff like we talked about with COVID, but just the whole speed of technology. I feel like it's exponentially just grown and exploded. But what prompted you to write your book in particular?
Well, let me go back and then I'll tell you the immediate stimulus. I began my career at NIH as a research psychologist, and I was the bold young one who said, I think we're on the wrong track. We should be studying healthy, successful people instead of ill and dysfunctional ones. And my whole audience laughed. But I'm one of those people, if you laugh at me, I just try harder. So I spent the next 20 years shadowing the greats of the planet, and I discovered 10 skills they were all using. And I've taught 4,000 training sessions in corporations around the world and written 6 books. But I didn't realize that it would help me in these crazy times when we're so overwhelmed and so blurred. And yet when I got into my overwhelm and I started consciously going back and using the skills, I turned the thing around.
Wow. Yeah. And, you know, I love, we're going to go deep into that because that is so true. You need a strategy on how to deal with these crazy times, because you can really get sucked into the minutia of little crazy this, a little crazy that, turn on the news. Oh, it's over.
Well, and let me just tell you, I told you I was going to tell you the real punchline was how this happened was a tornado and a hurricane hit my home within 3 hours and virtually devastated it. A month later, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And a month after that, my sister was diagnosed with cancer. So between repairing the house, the chemo treatments, 33 rounds of chemo, and a clinical trial that didn't work, I was in blur. And I'm a clear person, but not when I'm under those circumstances. And I think that's true of all of us. Absolutely. We can get overwhelmed.
Absolutely. And, you know, those are super extreme crisis moments in our life. But we were just talking before the interview that just ordinary folks in ordinary days get kind of put on blur with all that's kind of streaming at us from, you know, marketing on every corner to news segments here, there, and everything else that it could, and then of course all our technologies are biting for our attention, you know, the social media, So you have some clear ways in which we can build strategic ways for leadership of ourselves and our life with some of these skills. What are some of the best skills you've learned over the years?
I love that you said leadership of yourself, because that's where it has to start. The first skill I call success filing. And this is one of the things I noticed highly successful people did every day, and the rest of us never heard of. And this is my term, but what it is they took time every day to look at what they had accomplished that day, the tiny steps. And they said to me over and over, don't look for the big stuff. That comes after months and years. Look for the little stuff. And one of my directors at American Express said to me, let me tell you a story. I got to be director because I stopped and got gas, and that was on my list. The other guy didn't. He didn't make it to the interview. He said, so it's really true that it's the little stuff. The little stuff accumulates into the big stuff. So success filing is important. You just 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the end of the day. What did I do today that moved me in the directions I want to go, whether it's business goals, personal goals, health goals, because otherwise we feel like we're accomplishing nothing.
Yeah, and I love that you say that.
And we grew up as children wanting other people to acknowledge us. You know, yes, that was good. Oh, that was great. Here, have a lollipop. But as adults, we've got to take that responsibility for ourselves. Otherwise, we're always going to be going after other people's dreams, and we won't have time for our own. And, you know, kids have said to me a lot of times, like, my dad's a great CEO, but he's a terrible dad because he never makes time for me. That's sad. You know, that's sad. But like you say, we live in a very overwhelming time at business time. And having worked in 4,000 corporations as a trainer, I can just say the pace gets bigger and bigger and faster, and the new products come on. And, COVID forced us to learn a lot of new stuff. I mean, for me, it was Instacart. It was, I'm very happy with Zoom now. I'm on it all the time. But, we all had to get cameras. We had to upgrade our computers. I was a consultant to a couple of universities. They decided to give computers to their new students that had all the software loaded on it, because not everybody was ready for all these changes technologically. Very rough on us. Our brains have got to go into mega speed these days.
Yeah. But you make a really good point, Susan, about success filing, because I think our society really puts pressure on seeing the end result of success, of someone being ultimately successful, like a Jeff Bezos, and saying, oh, look, that's success. But I'm like, they're not acknowledging that there's many steps to get to the, the greatest mountain pinnacle top. And you won't get to the mountain pinnacle top until you do all the little bits down below. And we should also, give a little kudos to those little steps onward, because people will look at someone, you lost 100 pounds, you lost 300 pounds. That's great, but they first had to lose
daily
10
times
and
you
5
pushed away from the table, or you didn't take that dessert. So again, they kept saying to me, it's the little things strung together that make the big things. People try to take chunks. It's like, look, globbing it on. You can't do it that way. You got to do it step by step by step, and have good plans.
Yeah, because you'll get frustrated, and most of the time, then you'll just stop and say it doesn't work. But if you take it one bit at a time, you look back and be like, "Whoa, look what I did! It's been 2 years, 3 years. Now you can see a bigger picture of your goals."
Yes, and in some of the companies that I consult with, they do success filing Fridays. And so they got everybody success filing, but on Fridays, it's kind of like the team success file. And if somebody's had a bad week, this is such a benefit, because they can say, I didn't have any successes this week. And then other people on the team says, yes, but you helped me with this, and remember this. And so they can begin to put successes in your file. And here's the bottom line. When your success file is full, you feel successful. I mean, look at the word successful.
Yeah.
But when it's low, you feel dependent and needy. And it's so true. It's so true.
Wow. You said something there very interesting, that when you don't feel full, your success file, that you then feel this neediness or not full. And, I'm seeing a lot in our culture of putting the finger on someone else, or not taking responsibility, or, it's always someone else's fault. And I guess that comes a lot from people not filling their success folder.
Well, and we have to remember that as children, nobody probably taught us the success file. I mean, I really didn't find anybody who could tell me their parents told them how to success file. But we grow up with the assumption that somebody's going to praise us, somebody's going to graduate us, somebody's going to certify us, somebody's going to give us a degree. But at what point do we go, wait a second, I've got to start doing this for myself? And I would tell you, it's now that we need to do that. Right now, in this epidemic of blur, we've got to say, I am in charge of my own self-confidence.
I love it. Now, with things moving fast, we can do things to bring down the blur. What if some things that you've seen work in kind of wooing us back, slowing us down in our lives?
Well, for sure, the success filing is number one. But the other thing is, there's an understanding that I've been teaching, that there are 3 gears of success and 3 gears of leadership, and they have to mesh. You've had leaders sometimes who did the wrong things at the wrong time with you. The first gear of leadership is about learning the basics, learning the rules, the rights and wrongs, goods and bads. And in that phase, we need somebody telling us when we're right, when we're wrong, when we're doing it safely, when we can't do any more. But then there comes a point where we can do it, and we need our leader to pull back and assign us projects, tell us time frames, tell us what the rewards and bonuses are so we're motivated, and be available in case we need them, but not be standing over us all the time. That over-controlling leader really demotivates, because in the second gear of success, you have to learn what first gear rules you can eliminate. If you're going to become efficient and you're going to become competitive, you got to stop doing all of the startup stuff. It doesn't work anymore to do it that way. But then there comes a moment where even though that's not enough, and you'll see people pop through and they go, I have an idea. It's kind of like what happened to me at NIH when I said, we're going to do this, or I think this is the way ahead, and they all laughed. And people will laugh, but what you want to do if you're a leader is recognize when you have an employee that pops into the third gear and pay attention and support them, because otherwise that smart person is going to take everything you've trained them and take it to a competitor or open their own business which competes with you. It's such a loss. It's a brain drain. So the 3 gears of success and the 3 gears of leadership, and we can't be the same kind of leader all the time. That's the big news.
Well,
we can't lead the same way all the time.
You speak to something very interesting there, because how you see life yourself will generally be the way you think everyone will see it around you. And so you'll probably try to lead them and go like, come on, why aren't you seeing it like me? It's kind of like stepping into each of the shoes of your people and beginning to see how do they interpret the world and what skills and talents do they have that they can bring to the table and be in this collaborative.
I very often say to CEOs, go do something you've never done before, like take up scuba diving if you've never done it before. And remember what it's like when you're just starting and you're scared and you want somebody to tell you what to do. And then as you get better, realize what a pain in the butt it is if that person is on top of you all the time. And so, it really helps to get into some unfamiliar territory to kind of grease your gears. But this is a very important part of getting out of blur, because when we get into blur, we tend to go back into the safe zone, into the, I want to do everything right. Well, you can't do everything right. The world's changing too fast. What's right now in 10 minutes may not be right at all.
Especially with this fast changing world, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Microsoft was, 1.0, 1.0A. And I mean, there's a different version like every few months. Because things change. Yeah. And that was shocking when that was introduced, like with Word, but it's not shocking now. It's, it's the mode of the day.
Yeah. And you make a good point with managers out there. And I've met a bunch of wonderful women that feel that they want their department to succeed. So they have this idea that if I just do it, I'll just help. And before you know it, I remember walking into a company. I was meeting the C-suite individuals because they were going to have me work on a project with them. And 2 of the top executives were men and one of them was a woman. Well, when I came to meet them that day, the woman executive was underneath the desk, one of the desks, trying to connect something that come out from one of the workers there. And she was trying to troubleshoot. And I'm thinking to myself, bum and air does not look good, dude. You have a tech team. Ask your tech team to do this. But I know women mean well. They want to do it all because they want to feel efficient or whatever it might be. But at the same time, like you were saying, you don't add that level of trust to your workers if you don't let them just step in and let them come to you when there's a real problem. Hey, Susie, whatever, I'm having trouble with this. Now you can troubleshoot together instead of just taking over for everyone.
Yeah. And, I do an exercise in my CEO training programs is I have a rope and it's in the desk. And when they're graduating from one level to the other, I tie their hands behind their backs. And why that is I say, you can't do it anymore. You've got to get your team to do it. You've got to become a really good communicator. You've got to share your vision in detail. You've got to listen. And so, they scream and rant about, oh, this is a pain in the neck. I can't get anything done. I said, well, but what'd you learn? So it's a good idea sometimes to tie yourself up so you don't be the doer, but you become the leader,
absolutely
one that supports the team.
Absolutely. And then by doing that, you give them permission to rise up and be their best and to their fullest potential, operate to their fullest potential.
Yes. Well, and you had asked if there were several things, so I'll give you one more. When I was at NIH, I met Dr. Carl Pribram. He was a neurosurgeon from Stanford, and he did something absolutely amazing. He was able to measure the power of a thought. Think about that for a second. I mean, he said thoughts have an electromagnetic force field that can be measured. And so I said, well, so which thoughts are more powerful than other thoughts? Because this is so important in leadership and in marketing. And he said, when you see them, hear them, feel them, taste them, experience them in advance, they have more power than the run-of-the-mill thought that, comes undefined. And he said, marketers know this. They understand this. They make bright colors on their packaging. They have jingles so that you start to and they repeat it over and over and over. And he said, that's what you have to do with your dreams. You have to make your dreams powerful, especially if you're a leader and you're leading a team. I find a lot of time the team does not know what the leader's dream is. And the leaders are always shocked to find that out when I take their people and I say, okay, CEO, be quiet now. Just listen. What is the leader's vision? Tell me it in detail. And they can't do it.
Wow.
And these are high up people.
Now tell me, can the leaders sometimes not even be fully aware of their own vision?
Oh, you're smart. Yes. Sometimes it's because they haven't articulated it for themselves, but sometimes it's because they kind of are afraid to share it. But we have to be willing to share the vision in this fast-paced time. Maybe 25 years ago or 50 years ago, that wasn't important, but it's urgent today because we have to keep updating our internal program, our database, and we have to create these holograms, these very powerful thoughts that keep attracting opportunities to us.
Yeah.
So it's a different world. I'm with you. It's a different world, different demands, different products. One of my favorite stories during COVID had to do with Eric Yuan, who's the CEO of Zoom. And he was a graduate student in China in technology. And he had a girlfriend who lived 10 hours away by train. And he hated that. This is before, good internet connections and all of that. And he sat on that rumbling train every time he went to visit her, imagining what kind of software would allow us to work remotely. Thank heavens he did.
Yeah.
And he finally got a visa. On the 9th try, he came to the US. He worked for Cisco and WebEx. And he was the director of collaborative software, and he created Zoom. And when he left, there were 40 engineers that went with him. And he understood the gears. He understood that the product of Zoom had to be so simple that grandmothers could talk to their kids during COVID, that teachers could teach students that way, that teams could meet, that all of these functions, he understood the gears. And he had his team thinking ahead. Well, what will happen when this problem happens? And how are we going to communicate this? And what kind of trainings are we going to give for the public? And then when they had security issues, he got them on that and they started to get that handled. So you see those gears at work.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
In essence, what I'm hearing from you is that once you get something going and have maybe a bit of success, keeping the idea of always keeping your gears going of how do we not just pivot, but you'll have to make changes to keep revolutionizing and keeping your product relevant. And you mentioned something else about vision, both for leaders and personally for people out there. Having that vision clear. And I know for myself, I've used vision boards where I just kind of put up pictures because pictures are very powerful for many people. We are, a lot of us, very visual. And so by putting a visual representation of wherever that is, and I remember hearing a story from a gal that said, I had picked out of a magazine, oh my gosh, this is the house I'd love to live in one day. And she put it up on her board, right? And 3 years later, her husband and her were getting ready to move from the place they were at. And they started looking for homes or whatever. And lo and behold, in the paper that day when they went to look was the very home she had put up on her board 3 years later.
But we have a holographic brain, we create all of these details and we hold them and one detail can attract a whole bunch of others. It is electromagnetic. I mean, we live in such a different time. It used to be that the grandparents did the same thing as their parents, and then the sons and daughters of them, everything was the same. But not now. It's like if you're asleep for 2 hours, you've missed something.
But it's also a very exciting time because I feel there's so many opportunities. If you're ready to grab hold of them, be willing to put in the effort to learn all the different opportunities and keep up to speed. It's so exciting. I don't want us to leave without everyone finding out how they can get their very own copy of Blur. How could they do that?
Well, it's on Amazon. It's also on Audible because so many people are listening to books now instead of reading them. So I went in the studio and it's my voice. So it'll be me talking to you.
That's awesome.
So yes. And then that's book 4 of the Technology of Success series. So there's The Joy of Success, Our Children Are Watching, Success Has Gears, and now Blur.
Yes. And Success Has Gears and The Joy of Success also, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I saw a website, technologyofsuccess.com. Is that also a valid site for them to get in contact with you?
That's me.
Awesome.
And I respond. If people write to me, I answer. So I invite people's questions. I'm also on social media all over the place. I really want to share this. My life mission is to teach these skills that I've spent all these years learning. I don't want to keep them. I want to give them.
That's right. You've got this wonderful gift and you're ready to give it to people. And people, please go out and get that gift today. Purchase Blur. And thank you so much for coming today, Susan Ford Collins, to join us on Savvy Broadcasting.
I enjoyed it myself. Thank you so much, Christina.
You betcha. Take care.
Looking for a hilarious read? Well, check out my latest book, My Crazy Roommates. The names have been changed to protect the deranged. Step into the wild and unpredictable world of young adulthood in the heart of New York City. Brace yourself for a roller coaster ride through the trials, tribulations, and hilarious moments of shared living spaces with a colorful cast of characters. Fasten your seatbelt and get ready to laugh, cringe, and maybe shed a tear as you delve into the pages of My Crazy Roommates. So get your copy today, available at Amazon.com.